Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to entirely transform your mindset about economic downturns. We're going to use hard, historical data to take you from a place of very understandable fear to just absolute, unshakable, data-driven confidence. If you've ever felt that awful pit in your stomach when the financial news suddenly turns grim, well, you are in exactly the right place today. Let's dive in.
To really kick things off, I want to take you back in time to a very specific, honestly terrifying day, March 9th, 2009, 676. That is exactly where the S&P 500 closed amid total global financial panic. Think about it. The U.S. economy had just shed 800,000 jobs in a single month. Banks were literally being nationalized, and the word depression was just flashing constantly across every single news ticker. Every possible signal was screaming at everyday investors to get out, move to cash, and stay out until the dust settled. But now, compare that to today. Over 5,000 points. It's wild, right? Let's really unpack this. The investors who panicked got out at 676 and waited for safety missed out on one of the absolute greatest wealth-building opportunities in modern market history. The ones who stayed invested, they turned that 676 into over 5,000 in roughly 15 years. But honestly, how were they supposed to know what to do in real time while watching their life savings seemingly evaporate? Not in hindsight, but right there in the trenches. Well, here is our roadmap for this explainer to figure that out. We'll be covering 1. The March 2009 trap. 2. Two types of investors. 3. The cost of waiting. 4. Market recovery mechanisms. 5. The recession playbook. And 6. Opportunity, not disaster.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the March 2009 trap.
To truly understand this trap, we need to meet our two investors. First up is Marcus. Now, Marcus's completely understandable fear drives him straight to cash when the market drops. He halts his contributions and tells himself, he's just waiting for economic clarity. It feels responsible at the time. But then we have Lena. Lena is an inspiring, elegant, highly professional Asian woman who navigates the corporate world with this incredible aura of trust and prosperity. She operates with unshakable confidence because she's totally data-driven. She knows a profoundly counterintuitive truth. Doing the absolute least during a panic actually generates the best outcomes. She exploits the downturn while everyone else runs from it, securing her own financial freedom.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the cost of waiting.
Just look at the sheer scale of this gap. Ned Davis Research analyzed 13 U.S. recessions going all the way back to 1948, and what they found completely dismantles conventional wisdom. Investors who moved to cash and just waited around for the economy to stabilize missed an average of 32 percentage points of return compared to the folks who just held firm. 32%. That's massive. By trying to be cautious and protective, Marcus is systematically missing out on the most explosive periods of wealth generation. And the absolute most crucial point is this. The stock market bottoms, on average, 4 to 6 months before the recession actually officially ends. Markets price the future, not the present. By the time the National Bureau of Economic Research comes out and officially announces the recession is over, the stock market has already recovered the vast majority of its losses. So if you wait for the all clear, you aren't being early or safe. You're actually structurally, systematically late.
Okay, moving right along to Section 4, market recovery mechanisms.
Let's look at why this happens. First up is valuations. Professor Robert Shiller over at Yale uses something called the CAPE ratio. That's the cyclically adjusted price-to-earnings ratio. His historical data proves that extreme pessimism during recessions creates the absolute lowest, most attractive valuations of an entire market cycle. Stock prices plummet, earnings forecasts are slashed, and suddenly productive assets, like real ownership stakes in powerful businesses, are on a massive, massive sale. The lowest CAPE readings in history always perfectly align with the depths of major recessions, and they consistently lead to the highest 10-year returns. And this next point brilliantly illustrates our second and third mechanisms. Goldman Sachs data shows that when we think of recessions, we usually think of GDP, the overall economy. And sure, that takes years to recover. But remember, stocks are priced on corporate earnings. During a recession, companies ruthlessly cut costs. So when revenue just slightly recovers, it flows through a much, much leaner cost structure. Because of this, corporate earnings bounce back 8 to 12 months faster than GDP, generating these huge 25 to 40% growth rates in the first year alone. The market sees those earnings recovering and it just takes off long before the broader economy does.
The fourth mechanism is honestly the most deeply human one, recency bias. Dalbar's behavioral data reveals that we are literally wired to expect recent negative market performance to just keep continuing. Because it's been bad lately, our brains scream at us that it's going to be bad tomorrow, and this causes the largest outflows from equity funds to happen at the exact market bottom when fear is at its absolute peak. This is the exact trap Marcus falls into, right? He sells the future at a massive discount simply because the recent past was painful.
So, how do we avoid that? Let's check out Section 5, the Recession Playbook. Now, before we start executing this playbook, the data absolutely mandates an essential disclaimer. This elegant strategy only works if you have genuine cash liquidity outside your portfolio. You must have an emergency fund. Why? Because you can never, ever put yourself in a position where you are forced to sell your assets at depressed prices just to survive. The data also notes that extreme tail risk scenarios, think the 1930s, do require much longer timelines to recover. And finally, staying invested doesn't mean just ignoring everything. It means disciplined rebalancing, not panic selling. So here is Lena's flawless framework broken down into 3 simple steps. Step 1, she maintains her predetermined investment schedule unconditionally, totally regardless of whatever horrifying news cycle is happening. Step 2, she systematically rebalances her portfolio toward equities as they fall. This forces her to naturally buy low, and Vanguard's research actually proves this disciplined rebalancing adds about 0.35% a year to returns during market dislocations. Step 3, when recession headlines hit, she only reviews her emergency cash liquidity. She never alters her long-term investment allocation. It's just a beautifully simple, ironclad system.
Let's bring it all home with Section 6, opportunity, not disaster. Let's return to Marcus and Lena back on March 9th, 2009. While Marcus waited on the sidelines for the economic data to finally feel safe, the S&P 500 skyrocketed approximately 68% in the 12 months following that horrifying market bottom. 68%! While unemployment was still rising, while the news was still absolutely terrifying, the market was already looking ahead. Marcus protected himself from the bottom, sure, but in doing so, he completely missed the climb right out of it. Lena captured that 68% not because she timed the market perfectly, but because she simply never stopped showing up. The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is a total paradigm shift. Armed with decades of historical data, you've got to realize that recessions are not financial disasters you're merely trying to survive. They are incredibly rare, mathematically proven opportunities to exploit. The difference between Marcus and Lena isn't luck, it's not inside information, it is simply understanding what the data actually says about what happens next and having the structural discipline to act on it. Now that you have the framework and the psychological tools to confidently stay in the market, it begs a massive follow-up question. Which specific asset classes actually protect and grow your wealth during a recession? Well, in our next explainer, we're going to dive exactly into what historical data says you should be holding, whether that's equities, bonds, real estate, or commodities, long before that next downturn even arrives. So make sure to subscribe and find out. Until then, keep relying on the data and keep building that unshakable confidence.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Every click helps us bring you foreign stories, valuable insights, and premium content. And welcome to our community. We'll see you again very soon.